what if the reason you picked a fight with your partner last night actually has absolutely nothing to do with them?
Oh, that's a dangerous thought.
Right. But what if it has, like, everything to do with how your parents reacted when you cried at 6 months old? Welcome to this deep dive into the psychology of human connection.
Yeah, it's a really fascinating area of study.
It totally is. So our mission today is to look at a stack of psychological research and uncover how, the very first bonds you formed as an infant might be secretly dictating your adult friendships and romances right now.
Exactly. We're looking pretty closely at John Bowlby's internal working model and also the continuity hypothesis.
Okay, so break that down for us.
Well, these concepts basically attempt to trace the architecture of your entire social life all the way back to day one.
Wow. So instead of a conscious choice, it's almost like, it's like your brain is running a predictive text algorithm.
That is a brilliant way to visualize it, yeah.
Like if your earliest texts, crying for food or comfort, if those were always ignored, your brain just sort of autofills, they're going to ignore me
Yeah.
into your relationships today.
Yes, exactly. Bowlby's internal working model is just that. It's a mental representation formed in infancy.
So it's like an operating system downloaded right at birth.
Right. And if your caregivers are responsive, your predictive text autofills with trust and safety. You become securely attached.
Which is the ideal scenario, obviously.
Definitely. But if that early care is, inconsistent or neglectful, your brain learns to anticipate rejection.
I imagine that totally changes how a kid navigates the playground.
Oh, dramatically. I mean, securely attached kids generally exhibit higher empathy, right? They form really solid friendships.
Makes sense. They feel safe.
Exactly. But insecurely attached children, they learn to cope in very polarized ways. So take avoidant children, for instance.
Good. What do they do?
Well, because they've learned to expect rejection, they just withdraw emotionally.
Oh,
Yeah, and that isolation makes them statistically much more likely to become victims of bullying.
they pull away and basically make themselves an easy target. That's so sad. And what about the kids getting, like, inconsistent care?
Right, so those are the resistant children. Because they never really knew when a caregiver would actually be there for them, they learned to use aggression to force attention.
So they're trying to control their environment.
Precisely. So out on the playground, they are much more likely to actually become the bullies.
That playground dynamic is fascinating, but surely, we grow out of that by the time we start dating, right?
You'd really think so. But researchers Hazan and Shaver actually tested that exact assumption.
Wait, really?
With a really famous love quiz, they actually published it in a local newspaper.
Oh, that's wild. In a newspaper.
Yeah, and they analyzed 620 responses just to see if those childhood coping mechanisms manifested in adult romance.
So did the predictive text hold up?
It did. It really did. So about 56% of the respondents were classified as secure.
Okay, so over half.
Right. And they reported long-lasting happy relationships built on mutual trust.
Which leaves a pretty huge chunk of people running on that buggy predictive text.
Yeah, about 25% fell into the avoidant category.
And what does that look like in an adult?
In adulthood, that looks like keeping your partner at arm's length, dodging intimacy, and just bailing when things get too close.
Ouch. And the rest?
Then you have the 19% who were resistant. Their relationships were shorter and highly volatile.
Because they're waiting for the other shoe to drop.
Exactly. They are constantly terrified their partner is going to abandon them. This is the continuity hypothesis in action, the childhood pattern just repeating in adulthood.
Hold on, though. I've taken quizzes like this in magazines. They're asking, what, 30-year-olds to accurately remember how their parents treated them when they were 2?
It's a big leap, yes.
I can't even remember what I had for breakfast on Tuesday. How is that scientifically sound?
Honestly, it's the biggest vulnerability in Hazan and Shaver's study. It relies heavily on retrospective data.
Which is basically just memories.
Right, and people's memories are notoriously unreliable, especially regarding early childhood.
Plus, no one really wants to admit their parents were terrible in a random newspaper quiz.
Exactly. That brings up the issue of socially desirable answers. We naturally want to frame our families in a positive light.
Which would inherently skew the data.
Completely. And beyond that, you can't ignore the massive confounding variables. Adult relationship success is tangled up with your distinct personality, your life experiences, your culture.
Right, so if someone goes through a messy breakup, we can't just point to their time in diapers as the sole cause.
We really can't. It's practically impossible to isolate infant attachment as the single definitive trigger for emotional instability decades later.
Got it. So while longitudinal studies do strongly demonstrate that early attachment influences your mental health and emotional skills, the data isn't some flawless crystal ball.
No, it's not predicting your every heartbreak.
It's a strong foundation, but one you build upon and alter as you actually experience life.
Exactly. The early script matters, absolutely. But you aren't doomed to just repeat it word for word.
Which leaves a pretty heavy question for you to mull over. If the core code of your relationship style was written before you could even speak a single word, how much of your romantic type today is an active, conscious choice?
That's a great question.
And how much is just you unconsciously rereading a script written by a toddler?